Coming up on the HR Big Meat podcast.
You can get to a place where you can go into a room feeling confident and clear about what your value is. You just have to do the work. That's the truth of it. You've got to be intentional, you've got to be deliberate, and you've got to be brave enough with yourself to really look at what some of those labels are, because I think sometimes we don't want to look at them because they don't feel very comfortable, and we have to look at those stories to counter them, otherwise they have a lot of power over us.
Welcome to the HR Big Meat podcast. This is the place where we amplify the voices of women in HR and have honest conversations about what it really means to work in this profession, so that nobody has to internalise the idea that they are the problem. We are all about you having sustainable impact without compromise. So expect real stories, just a smattering of swear words, a few uncomfortable truths, and everything that you'd hope from something that is proudly not like normal HR. Are you ready to be a human's resource? Great, let's jump right in. Today's guest is the brilliant Paula Brockwell, chartered psychologist, culture strategist, self-confessed culture nerd, and founder of the Employee Experience Project. Paula works with businesses in growth and transition to build cultures that actually support sustainable high performance. In this conversation, we get into confidence, credibility, why HR keeps accepting crumbs instead of baking the bloody cake, and what it really takes to stop shrinking yourself in rooms where you belong. This woman is incredible, and quite frankly, so is this episode. Now then, Paula Brockwell is the kind of woman who can get a room of about 200 women standing up, shouting out in unison, "Fuck that shit." You know, this is going to be a good conversation. So, Paula, what on earth? How did that happen? Pray tell.
Well, it's entirely your fault. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I was about, I did my talk at the Big Mate a couple of years ago, and you invited me to talk about the thing that's most important to me, I think. And for me, a lot of my life is about rebellion, if I'm completely honest, disruption. And so I think that moment in the talk just was that kind of accumulation of the story that I was telling, and an invitation for everybody else to kind of take their own revolution or rebellion on things. So yeah, it was cool, wasn't it? It was cool that I managed to talk them into it and that they came with me. To be fair, we did have some really beautiful souls like the awesome Faye Willis in there, so we did have a fudge that poop as well for those who didn't feel comfortable saying fuck that shit. So there was options for everybody. So yeah, we made sure everybody was included. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd forgotten that, because and what made me laugh when I saw your sign actually was that, like, I know, like, because we chat a lot and we'll swear, but on the slide you'd put a little asterisk where the you could be, just so that the swear word wasn't quite as offensive on the
Always
screen.
socially acceptable. That's me, just known for my social acceptability.
Right. And I just thought, what is this all about? So I'm looking at the slides over here. This is where they are. And your talk at the Big Meet was bursting out of the chains of being just the woman from HR. So what makes you the person to talk about that?
Yeah, so I think so for me, I think I live a lot of my life noticing the chains that people put themselves in. You know, professionally, that's my job. I'm a psychologist, I'm a culture nerd, and I spend a lot of my life looking at organizational systems and why they are as they are, and how people have got themselves stuck in situations that they don't really like. So I think professionally, it's my skill set. But the reason professionally it's my skill set and my passion is because I think personally I come from a world that you wouldn't expect a gobby management consultants to come from, really. And I think I've had to learn over the years, and probably as I grew up, saw the boxes that I and other people were being put into, and had to make really conscious choices about how I moved in the world and how I wanted to be. So yeah, I think it's a real passion of, or it's a real guide that I live my own life by, in terms of who do I want to be, how do I want to show up, what are the rules that I want to play by. It's something that I encourage people to do professionally, and I think, well, that's why we're mates, isn't it? Let's be honest, because neither of us are willing to live by the rules that other people put on us. And so it just felt like the right topic to talk about at the Big Meet. It felt like the right room to bring that conversation forward, really.
Yeah, totally. And it's something that a lot of women feel in the profession is that they're pigeonholed and they're just HR. I felt it a lot myself when I was in house. I'd sit in meetings and I'd be like, I don't know what to say because I'm just HR, and what can I contribute because I'm just HR, and um it's a definite pervasive thing and a pervasive narrative. So what are some of the boxes that you see HR professionals putting themselves
Yeah.
being put in?
Yeah, so well, it's an interesting dynamic. I guess we'll get there, won't we? But I think some of the common boxes are this piece around us being the guardians of what good looks like within an organisation. So we're the conscience, we're the ones who have to say yes, but we're the ones who have to consider the people. We're the ones who do the fluffy stuff. So I think a lot of the time there is a lot of assumption about what HR is and what its value is, and also what its sphere of influence is within a room. And I think a lot of the time that puts us in a place as HR professionals where we're almost grateful when we get to play in that. So a lot of the time we're just not given the space to speak. But I think that creates this dynamic where often then we don't feel like we give ourselves the permission to create the space to speak as well. So often it's an add-on, it's a protection, it's a rescue of when things go wrong because the right things haven't been checked proactively. And I think because the profession has been so undervalued for so long, that a lot of us have started to create this definition of value for ourselves. That is, I rescue it, I fix it, I police it. And that stuff is important, but that's like 20% of the value of what we can actually deliver as professionals in the room. So that piece around feeling satisfied that we've got some crumbs thrown to us rather than thinking actually we deserve to be part of baking this cake and eating as much as everyone else. I think a lot of people have been beaten down over time around that. So yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. A lot of the work that I do with HR leaders is about supporting them to really see their value, see their worth, and helping them take the steps and the moves that they need to build the relationships and the access that they need to be really credible, because you can't do cultural work from the sidelines. You can't do it as a fluffy add-on effectively. And I would love to see more people just holding that space naturally because they know they deserve it and they know they can add value.
Oh my God, me too. Exactly what I want. I'm just like constantly intrigued by it. Whether that, why is it devalued? What is your take on why it's devalued in the first place?
It's this weird cycle, I think. I think it always has been devalued because, its roots of where it comes from, the personnel management that comes from the 1950s that, was just kind of sorting out the mechanics of having the right bums on seats, etc. I think human resource was not valued for a long time in business, and still a lot of the time, I don't think it's truly considered in terms of the capacity to leverage it. So I think it comes from a history, but I think that as a profession, we haven't done a brilliant job. And I know I'm saying we as a psychologist who's never worked in house as an HR professional, but I've played in HR my whole career, and I think I would give the same criticism to my psychology peers. I think we have not forced a seat at the table. We have not, as a profession. I think. Well, let's get straight into a bit of CIPD bashing. And no
Oh,
offense, I think
come on then.
you do some really great things on some really great stuff. I'm sure. I don't know what it is, but I think as a profession, when you look at how we're training people, what we're encouraging them to do, you are not learning how to be a strategic partner. You are not being taught the mechanics of great business and what drives a business. To learn that, to be a true strategic partner on the business's priorities and goals and really understanding the operating context, you've got to teach that to yourself as an HR professional. You've got to go in, you've got to try and understand a business. I don't think we are being trained or supported or developed to have the conversations about what it really means. Still, a lot of what we're doing is, well, we should do this and we should value people. And of course, happy people are more productive. And we're having these kind of fluffy badges that we use to try and throw at a business, and it's moving at such a pace and a different rhythm that actually we're not able to get in. So I think our history doesn't do us any favours. I think our training doesn't do us any favours. And I think the reputation and perception of HR in business doesn't do us any favours either. But think the tendency of us as a profession to band together and say they're not listening to us and it's not fair is really unhelpful. We end up in a mode of victim and not being able to influence, when in fact there is a shed load that we can influence. There's a shed load of stuff that we can do to build that partnership and that credibility, but the narrative is holding us back, I think, a lot of the time. So that comes right back to why I was pushing this revolutionary fuck that shit in my talk at the HR Big Meet, because we can take all those stories, we can take all those beliefs that other people have about us, and we can give them power and we can allow them to be true, or we can actually say, I'm going to show you that that isn't true, and I'm going to show you what our true value is, and I'm going to get a plan for how I build credibility, relationships and presence within the boardroom or with managers more broadly to allow me to move through. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to get the hell out of Dodge and find somewhere where I am being valued. So I think, I've got a bit excited, haven't I? But I think that piece around understanding our value, seeing our own value and expecting it to be accepted and making moves to make sure it is accepted is really important.
I could listen to you being excited all day. There's so much gold in everything that you just said. And in my mind, I'm also thinking around gender.
Mm-hmm.
So gender is a barrier to how much we're heard. It just is. There's plenty of research on it. And obviously you're a woman, and I'm interested to know, how do you navigate that as a woman going into you're doing exactly what a lot of us want to be doing, which is going in and influencing and making change and driving change and doing all the things that are having such a great big impact in the world. So many of us in HR want to be doing that, and I know that it's possible because I see it, but I also know that sometimes we're not aware of the gender barriers that exist, which could, if we're not careful, that could lead into another victim. Oh, it's because I'm a woman, and that's not what is. I think there's clarity of knowing there is plenty of research that says that women are not listened to as much as men, and HR is a predominantly filled with women, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't got the evidence, but in my head I feel there has got to be some kind of link with the fact that we're predominantly female, and we have these issues alongside what you've already said. So I've gone a long way around asking you, what's your how do you deal with it?
I think it's about challenging the label. It's about not accepting the outcome, if I'm honest. So look, I think about myself and what I do in my career day in, day out, and the rooms that I end up in. And sometimes I look around the room and the 20-year-old in me or the 15-year-old in me is going, how the F are you getting people to listen to you about this? And, not only am I a woman, but I'm a working class girl from Belfast with ADHD. And yet I can go and talk to chief executives and chairs of ridiculous businesses and do ridiculous bits of work. Actually, sometimes I'm just like, how the hell have I got myself here? And how the hell am I in a place where I feel like, actually, this might be really tricky and muddy, but I have confidence that I can figure out the best way to move through this. And I think the truth is that personally, my journey started with not accepting the labels that I was given. And I think, I suppose very early in my career, I was both, we'll say lucky, that I joined a consultancy that was very fast paced, was very under resourced. And at 24 years of age, I was being chucked in to talk to boards and chairs about chief executive recruitment, and I was doing the assessment and onboarding of these people. I shouldn't have been there. I probably said a lot of idiotic things as well as some useful things from my training. But what I had to do a lot of work to be I was in a place in those sorts of rooms where I'd go in and I'd do what I need to do, and genuinely I felt so out of my depth and so like I shouldn't have been there, that I'd be physically sick for about 12 hours after those days. So I got memories of had a regular client in North Wales, and I live in Sheffield, and it would genuinely take me about 6 hours to do the drive home because I'd get a banging migraine headache. The tension would drain out of my body through being physically sick, and I'd have to drive 30 minutes, pull over, vomit, lie, recover a bit, drive a little bit more to get home. So in those days, the labels had a huge amount of power over me. My inexperience, to be fair, and knowing that I was out of my depth had a huge amount of power over me. But to get through that, I had to make a choice of figuring out how to stop that cycle, really. So I did some therapy stuff, but I think as part of that, what I also did was, before I went into any room, I would think to myself, what is my unique value? I may not be the oldest, the most experienced, the most male, or whatever it is. I might not be the most immediately accepted, but what is my unique value in this room? And how do I show that to these people immediately? And I still do that. I'm, irreverent, sweary, Northern Irish 40-odd-year-old these days, and I'll go into rooms and I think to myself, what do these people need to see before I accidentally slip out a swear word or whatever it is, or before I make an inappropriate joke because I'm just trying to entertain myself? What do I need to show these people to allow myself to be credible and valuable to them in order for me to reveal all the myself in my full technicolor? And that, I think, is a really powerful exercise. When we step past the labels that others have, if we stay in the labels that others have for us, we're looking at all the reasons that we're not valuable or why we not be heard. If we reframe it into, why am I valuable? What is it that I bring that is unique to these other people, that to anyone else in the room? And what is it that I bring that is valuable to these people? Then we're able to make some really conscious moves and demonstrate some stuff in the early parts of conversation that allow us to really build trust, build that platform to then just be whatever the hell we want. So that, honestly, that's a very roundabout story, really, but that's what I do. I really focus on this bit of, what is it that only I can provide in this room, and how do I make sure that I provide that exceptionally, really early, show my unique value, and then go from there. I'm doing it as much for me as I am for those people. I'm reminding myself that I'm valuable, I'm worthy, and I'm going to be useful in that conversation, which allows me to bring a really different energy than I would do if I'm thinking, oh God, here I am, 24, a female, and all these old white men are probably not going to listen to me, So yeah, maybe have a think about that if you're considering your credibility. I find that helpful. I don't know. What's your thoughts? Does that resonate with you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think what that's just the different energy that you're showing up with, isn't it? Like I literally last week talked to a group of HR professionals about how I just don't think we should be, our aim now shouldn't be for a seat at the table. I just think we're beyond that. I think like we need a seat, the HR needs a seat at the table is rooted in lack. It's rooted in needing to prove ourselves. It's rooted in, we need to be good enough to be here. When frankly, everyone who's sitting at the table at the moment, you're not doing that great job, dudes.
Have you seen the world of work? Have you seen it? Just say it.
Right. So yes. So what if actually we went with it with the energy of saying, we're going to lead you, we're going to show you the way because you fucked it up for long enough, and now we're doing something different, right? That for me is the energy that you're showing up, which I think feels, what you're talking about is, rather than showing up in, I need to prove myself, it's showing up in, I'm here as a credible kind of person, and I'm showing up with the intent to lead. Yeah. That's much more, that will just show up differently in your energy, in how you are, even if you're not into like embodiment. If you will just hold your body differently because you're thinking differently about yourself. And that's genuinely where I think we need to like be at as a profession. I just, no more like trying to just HR should and HR must. No, actually, and if anything, we should be leading now and showing people the way, which my head's just gone to. That's really difficult to do when you're, what you said about not being trained in how the business kind of operates. And so that's where my head's gone to, is like, we should be leading, and yet it's quite difficult to lead when we've got such a lack or such a gap of potentially knowledge that would help us do that.
Yeah, well, for me, it's less about, we don't need to be finance directors. That's what business have got those for. I think it's more about, so in our work, we do a lot around looking at what we call the kind of culture blueprint. And the idea of that is that, in my work, what I see is a lot of the reason that culture, and I think we are the custodians of people strategy should really be the thing that says this is the type of culture that we need and this is how we need to drive things forward. This is the lever that drives performance around things. In my world, what I see is that the conversation that a lot of people have is culture equals how people feel. And then we stop there. If actually all we did as HR professionals was then close that blueprint in terms of saying how people feel influences what they believe and therefore how they behave, and how they behave influences business results, then suddenly we're having a much different conversation. So we're not really learning anything more. All we're doing is connecting the different bits of the dots that we're seeing across the business. So instead of coming and reporting on the engagement survey and saying engagement's down and everybody's pissed off and they don't trust the leaders, we're saying, and what that's telling us is that they're showing up with attitudes that say when there's something hard, well, Bob, the chief executive, wouldn't bother to do this, so I'm not going to. So when a customer turns up in a shop, they don't stand up and say hello to them. So our sales are down. So if we join the dots to what are the other people in the leadership team actually pay attention to, which is dead easy for us to do if we just follow that equation, then suddenly we're talking in their language. So for me, it is a training opportunity. I think CIPD have a huge opportunity, but it's more a language thing. We are focusing on the stuff that's important. We do really understand how the business runs. It's just that we use a lens and a language that's focusing around experience and emotions. And if we could evolve that language and finish off that kind of equation or that blueprint, probably we'd be able to talk in a much more impactful way. So I think it's a bit like I don't know, I'd use the analogy of a meal where we're talking at the level of ingredients and the rest of the business is talking about what the menu item is. So they're like, I don't want to hear about the sweet corn, I don't care. But we can, if we were actually saying, look, the flavour of it's been overspiced, so nobody's buying this dish because it's overspiced, then they might listen to us. But if we're just shouting, we've got too much chilli, then, there's too much chilli in the stock room, they don't really connect what the consequence is. So that's the piece that I think we need to work on. How do we tell stories that connect to other people rather than make sense to us? I think a lot of the time we think the should work. People aren't happy, we should make them happy, but actually what they can really pay attention to and what they have to prioritize is more, are we selling enough widgets? Are we getting enough stuff out the door? So link it to that and you'll find that your impact drives more effectively in that way.
It sounds so simple. Is it that simple?
It is. I think it's that simple. And honestly, I see the teams that we work with on culture work, I see like genuine, just a flip on it. If for me, it's a language and a mindset thing. And we work with teams to really think about this bit of how do we anchor our cultural strategy? How do we anchor our narrative to the business goals? And basically what happens in the work that we do is it about sort of anywhere from about month 6 to 8 to 12, suddenly we're not, it's my job at the start to finish that equation for supporting the HR team to finish that equation and make that, create that platform, I guess, to build that relationship. But then there's a point at which I don't have to speak anymore because the shared language is established and that shared perspective is established, and then nobody needs me in the room anymore. And then I have my Mary Poppins moment and sod off because nobody needs me to help them with it because they figured it out. So it is a real flip thing that happens. And I think there's quite a few myths around this stuff that impact, that hold us back because we assume that it's just about sentiment or engagement, or that's what we're taught. That is definitely what we're taught. Culture, for example, is about engagement. If we push it forward, we can make a real difference.
Amazing. And when you were talking about like not being needed anymore, I was like, is that what HR should be aiming for?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to get to the place. My belief is that HR's role in really effective organisations is conductor of the people strategy. So basically, you're setting the tone, you're setting the rhythm, you are sitting above. And again, I know I'm talking very culture centric because this is my world, but you're sitting above, understanding the type of behavioural tone and experiential tone that the business needs in order to succeed. And you are so not caught in the day-to-day of making that happen that you're noticing as the business reorientates, whether the market's shifting or the goals are changing, and you're saying, right, we need to change track here. But you have built the capability and the understanding in the business that means that you are not writing the theme tune, singing the theme tune and doing the dance. Leaders and managers are running that tone, and your role is really about just noticing where different parts of the orchestra have got out of sync with each other and helping them bring them back together. That's where I see HR being able to deliver its full value, where you have the space to truly sit and you're building the capability and clarity in the business of how it needs to show up, but the managers and leaders are the people who are setting and managing the behavioural tone day by day, because they are doing it whether we want them to or not. They're either doing it in the way that the business needs them to, or they're doing it however they want to, and you're dealing with the consequences. And I think that's where most businesses are. It's all being done a bit haphazardly, and then HR's job is to mop up the consequence. But if we can shift the perspective on that, it fundamentally changes what our role is. And there's plenty of businesses, there's a reasonable number of businesses out there who've got that rhythm and they've got that right, but that they need a lot less HR people for that, because the right parts of the system are doing the roles that they need to do. I don't know. A lot of the HR people I talk to are really pissed off that they feel like they're doing the jobs their managers should be doing. So I don't think what I've said there is contentious. I think the truth is that we have value far beyond mopping up on things. It's just about how we create that flip to make sure that our influence is being held at the right part of the system.
And does that require a certain type of leader? Is it like in the businesses where this is happening? It feels chicken and egg. Like, what comes first? Is it the HR showing up differently, or is it that the leadership exists there that is willing to see it differently, or is it just a combo?
I think it's a really awkward dance where everybody's standing on each other's feet to start with, and it's just the perseverance of working together on that. So I think in any sort of stuck system, which is what I think we're in, where the behavioural and role norms have got caught in where they are, the only thing that can happen is that one group decides to show up differently and then starts to bring the other group with them. So I think in all behaviour change, relationship patterns are really quite stuck and tricky. So we can't wait for as you say, we've got to stop waiting for an invitation to the table. We've just got to start showing up differently, building those relationships differently, and picking people off and educating them and bringing them with us. And I think, as I said earlier, being willing to get the hell out of Dodge. If we do that work and we can see that it's not making progress, then go and find somewhere where we can make progress. So, revolution isn't about just banging your head off a brick wall until you send yourself into unconsciousness. You've got to be feeling like you're starting to break the wall down, or there's no point. So, I'm not talking sunshine and rainbows here. If we build it, they will come. But I definitely think we need to play more of a role of trying to activate that. I suppose the other thing I would say is having really conscious recontracting conversations. Again, one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is they just show up differently and they expect everybody else to understand it and respond to it. And I think if you want it to be different, you need to have some really good conversations about how you want it to be different, why you want it to be different, how it is you're going to be showing up differently, and what you want to return from those people around you. So those one-to-one conversations and relationship building with the people who are already around the table and getting them to support you in that revolution, I think is really critical.
I just feel there's so much power in what you're saying. I'm going to be different and this is how it's going to be. That's such a powerful thing, which requires it requires self-belief, it requires energy, it requires brain space, the capacity to think through all of that kind of stuff. So there's plenty of first steps, I suppose, that people could take. But if people are listening to this and going, yeah, I want to show up differently, and yeah, I want this to be different, and I want Paula's world to come into fruition, what's the first thing you think people should be doing?
So I think the first piece is around this. How do I I show my value at the table? So I would always say, start with what is important to the people that I'm trying to connect with. What is it? And go into their world. What is it that's important to them? What's keeping them awake at night? Not what should be important, but what are the things, the top 3 to 5 things that actually they're paying attention to, their world is nudging them to worry about and pay attention to and feel pain around. And then really look at what is my unique value around those areas. What is it that I can provide and I can deliver? So in understanding those 2 things, you are shifting to a language and a framing that feels relevant to that person and why they should pay attention to you. But you're also then thinking about, how do I put my shoulders back and come into this in a valuable way? So I would do those 2 pieces first, really clearly and sensibly. And looking at you, I'm also thinking about some of the lovely coaching questions that you would use with your clients on this. What are the labels that are holding me back? What are the experiences that are holding me back? What are the beliefs that I'm bringing into this situation, or the fears that I'm bringing into this situation that may stop me from really owning and feeling that sense of unique value? So pay attention to that stuff, name it, and make a commitment to yourself to not give that power in that context. And I think that then, that piece of thinking, doing that for yourself, getting some help from a coach to do that could be really useful. And then go and have those one-to-one conversations saying, I can see this is important. This is how I think I can help on it. This is how I'm going to start showing up differently on it. And this is how I want us to work together on it. So build those one-to-one relationships and then take that into a group context. So I start to sound really like manipulative, don't I, on this? But I think it's purposeful and targeted. What is it I want to achieve? How do I get myself in a mindset and a space to do that? And then go out and start to build those relationships with people and make it happen.
I don't think it sounds manipulative. I think it sounds intentional. I think we can get so caught up in doing the things that we think had value, and doing the to-do list and being reactive to all the things. And yes, I supported that, so I was good at, I did my job, I added my value there. That you don't have the space to then think about, how is it that I want to be? Is this how I want to be spending my time? Is this actually where the organisation gets the most value from me? So not manipulative, I wouldn't say, but far more intentional than I think many of us do operate within our careers, because we just don't take the time to think about how we want to show up. It's not, time is never a luxury, that we can't even take time to develop ourselves, let alone actually think about how we want to be and how we want to be showing up. So
and I think, I suppose what occurs to me in terms of what might somebody be thinking, listening to this and listening to me going this and this and this and this, is that certainly over the years when I've talked to others about this, where I'm mentoring or coaching or the like, I've had feedback from people that says, well, it's all right for you because you are, you're naturally very confident. And I think, and it's probably a useful thing to say that that's not true. That is, I don't think, well, maybe people are born confident, but certainly not people who grew up in 1980s Belfast. Don't grow up naturally confident on these things. I think what has got me to the place I am now around that is that true active intention. What's got me beyond, when I signed up for my master's and my parents said, oh, you can't possibly do that, go and be a shop manager. What pushed me to keep doing things like that was who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? And how do I make choices that move past the stories and labels that I have about myself? So I'm not talking from a position of, woke up one day, fell down the confidence tree and just like, just give this a go. It is hard work, and you have to be intentional, and you've got to repeat that work over every single interaction. And also, I don't think you can ever expect those labels and those stories that you tell yourself to go away. Just over time, you learn how to have power over them and notice when they are trying to have power over you and push them to the side to do what you want to do. So I think at best, there's a big call for me here about not judging others by how they present, and being willing to take your own journey on that, because you can get to a place where you can go into a room feeling confident and clear about what your value is. You just have to do the work. That's the truth of it. You've got to be intentional, you've got to be deliberate, and you've got to be brave enough with yourself to really look at what some of those labels are, because I think sometimes we don't want to look at them because they don't feel very comfortable, and we have to look at those stories to counter them, otherwise they have a lot of power over us.
Yes, so wise. You really are, because it's so true. It's that it is constant choosing to be who you really want to be. It's constantly, and it is constantly just dealing with the stuff in your head that goes, you can't do that, or you're like yeah. We've had lots of conversations online about how we're both subject to those same things, but we just keep on. You just got to keep on fucking that shit, haven't you?
Yeah,
Fudging
absolutely.
that poop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just got to say fudge that poop to it all and then move on for sure. And yeah, but I did really things like this. I've got this sign behind my head. It's but that's a reminder to myself to make a conscious choice about who I am, how I show up on things. So I think creating thinking about your tribe, thinking about those nudges that you give yourself in life to make sure that you're surrounding yourself by people and things that give you the energy to say fuck that shit as much as you need to, I think is important, which
Yeah,
is probably one of the reasons that I keep saying get the hell out of Dodge is an option, because so many of us accept what we think we're worth rather than what
yeah,
we're truly worth. And I see a lot of HR professionals just losing themselves in absolute shithole of organizations that are never going to change, that they're trying to protect. And actually,
yeah,
they just need to get out and go somewhere they're worthy of. So that's another piece for me that's massive, which is why I'm obsessed with what you're doing, because I just think you are driving that sense of permission of I am valuable, I am here, and I can be whatever the fuck I want to be, which is amazing.
thanks, dude. I think you're amazing too. And I think I'm gonna have to get you back on and talk to you again, because there's just so many different themes running throughout this: the confidence piece, the value piece, like how you present yourself. There's so much there. So, thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom. I'm gonna have you back. You can't get rid of me. You're stuck with
Cool.
me.
I'm in.
Thank you. Now, let's make this mean something. See, I was not joking when I said that this episode was awesome, as is Paula. Like, there are so many places that I could take you down in terms of reflecting and turning this into action. Tons of practical advice in there about how to get people on board with your cultural initiatives and all that jazz. And if you're not connected with Paula, then like you should already be running over to do that right now. Of course, you can get all the details of how to do that in the stuff below. Take a read, it's all really good. So so one of the places that I don't operate too well in is the kind of technical aspect of what we do in HR. There are tons of people out there for you to connect with and to who are doing this stuff way better than I ever could. Paula, for example. Where I operate is the place of us as individuals, how we resourced as individuals. So my reflection is going to take you down that route as opposed to go and do some cultural stuff. And that's okay. That's my magic. And interestingly, that's exactly what I want you to reflect on. Paula's whole bit at the beginning was about how does she walk into a room and know that she adds value? And that comes from within. A lot of us as women, we are looking for external validation of our worth. We get validation through other people telling us that we're doing good. And sadly, what that does is that has the potential then to completely destabilize us anytime that external validation is lacking. We're also not very good at like celebrating and owning the things that we do really well, because we're conditioned when we grow up to not be arrogant and to not be too confident and to fit the gender norms that exist within our society. And by our society, I've grown up in the UK, a lot of the kind of Western world. The norms that exist for us as women are such that we're meant to not be too confident, not be too arrogant, don't be too braggy, prioritize other people, blah blah blah. And so Paula's suggestion of intentionality around who we want to be and understanding the unique value that we bring as a result of being who we are, that to me is incredibly powerful. And that's what I want to encourage you to reflect on today, is what is the unique value that you bring? And there are a couple of ways of doing that, and I'm going to suggest for you. One of those is to look at the feedback that you're getting. So as much as it's not about external validation, what is it that people are coming to you for regularly? What is it that people say to you you do particularly well? Really take that feedback on board and interrogate it. Like, think about, well, what must that mean about me as a person that people are regularly complimenting me on this? Now, if you're not happy with the compliments and what you're being complimented for, then there's a different version of you that wants to get out in the world. And maybe that's a different conversation for another episode. But for now, I suppose then the reflection is for the feedback that is valuable and meaningful to you that you're receiving, that you take pride in, what are the strengths that sit underneath that? What must that mean about you if people are complimenting you on that? That's area one. The second area comes from within, because we have to be able to validate ourselves. And that is to look at, where do you feel most energized? When are you doing stuff and you just think, oh, this is brilliant, and you get all animated? Paula said in her episode, I can't remember the words that she used, but she was like, oh, I got a bit excited. Yeah. Yes. When do you get excited? When do words just like, oh, come out of you? When are you animated? When does your body light up? When does time fly for you? When are you doing things that you feel just energized? It's likely when you're feeling like that you are using strengths and you are using things that are meaningful to you. And that's your internal validation point, is what are the things I'm doing that feel really good, feel really brilliant energetically? It's likely that you're using strengths when you're in those moments. And if you can use your strengths more often, you're going to feel like that more often. So your reflection is, what is the value that you bring? And there's two routes to looking at that. One is the external validation, the feedback that you're getting. And the other is, when do you feel great energetically? Let me know, as ever. This is great. This is exciting. This is exactly what Paula is saying. This is exactly what I stand for. It's intentionality around who you want to be. You're not just HR. You're not a label. You're not a job title. You are a person with brilliant strengths, brilliant experiences, brilliant knowledge, wisdom. And it's as much about you owning all of that as it is other people recognizing that in the world. In fact, it's even more important for you to own it. So let's get braggy. I'd love to see you message me, contact me, do something to tell me what you are brilliant at, what unique value you bring, because let that be your experiment of bragging for once, because you absolutely deserve to. If you have enjoyed this episode, can I ask you a favour? Please, could you interact, leave a review, share it with your friends, do whatever you can to help get this in front of other women in HR who might need to hear the stories that we're sharing. Thank you. I appreciate you.